Be in orbit.
Picture, if you will, a peaceful night in rural Kentucky, 1955. The stars shimmer in a clear sky as the Sutton family gather for a typical Sunday evening, but they couldn't have imagined the terror that awaited them all. For the 11 witnesses present, what followed was a night-long siege by mysterious, silver-skinned entities the family described as goblins, creatures linked to a craft that no one could explain. What happened has echoed through decades of debate, fascination, and official dismissal, most notably by Project Blue Book. In this episode, I speak with Geraldine Sutton-Stith, daughter of one of the witnesses, who reveals new and unsettling details passed down by her father from inside that house. What really unfolded that night? And what does it mean for the rest of us? And now, onto the interview with Geraldine. So, should we just dive in?
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do.
Well, I was actually born in Kelly, which is really odd. And then my parents moved 2 weeks after I was born. So I've actually lived in Cadiz most of my life, which is close to Lake Barkley, down that area in Kentucky. We now live in Brandenburg. And so we've been here ever since. But, a lot's been going on, too, because the whole Kelly incident, the goblin thing, it is blown up. I mean, everybody, their brother, their aunt, their uncle, their sister, their nephew, everybody wants to know about the goblins. So I've been doing a lot of conventions and festivals, documentaries. I've got stuff coming up already in 2026. I'm getting scheduled up already. It's really a big thing. And we just celebrated our 70th anniversary in Hopkinsville for the goblins. It's been 70 years now since it happened.
Full disclosure to people listening, I met Geraldine a few years back. We went up and got in touch and had an incredible conversation by the river there about everything you're going to be hearing about today. So Geraldine and I kind of go back a little bit. And when we met... A few years, yeah. And when we met, you were gracious enough, and I'll just show the audience this guy. You see in the back of my shot all the time. Yeah, but this is one of yours. Absolutely. And I love it. It lives here. We call it Limpy after, your rescue animal. And so that guy lives there. So why don't we get into it? Tell me what happened to your family.
Oh, that's a fantastic story. Let's see. Of course, it happened August the 21st, 1955 in Kelly, Kentucky. Back then in Kelly, the population was close to 100, if that. It was a farming community, so it was mostly farms. It just so happened that my grandmother had a small farm there, and she was a widow at the time. So she was living on the farm with her 3 smaller kids who were 12, 10, and 7. That was Lonnie, Charlton, and Mary. And then my Uncle J.C. and his wife, Eileen, lived there with her to help out. And you got to realize my uncle was a Korean War vet. So, that plays a lot into this story, him being a Korean War vet. And my Aunt Eileen's brother, O.P. Baker, just happened to be there the weekend that all this happened. Oh, the night of, actually. He didn't come in until that evening. But along comes my dad, his first wife, Vera, and their friends, Billy Ray and June Taylor. They were stationed in Evansville, which was a couple of hours from Kelly at the time, and they were working with the carnival. So they were that close to home, so they decided to come in and visit for the weekend. They hadn't had anything scheduled, so they were waiting on that also, so it was no big deal, so they could get away. And so that's what they did. They came in for the weekend. They came in like on the Friday, and so we'll go on to Sunday evening, the 21st, when all this happened. There was 11 people in the house that night, all of the ones I just said. And what happened was, of course, it was evening time. My grandmother had gotten home from church. It was Sunday evening, and they had their supper, and the women were cleaning up. The men were just, tallying around and just playing cards and doing stuff kids were playing. Your usual thing that you do back in 1955. And Billy Ray decides to go out to the well to get some water because they didn't have any plumbing. A lot of folks back then didn't have plumbing. And so he's out at the well, and as he's there, he hears something, looks up towards the sky, and lo and behold, about 40 feet up in the air from him was this silver object, and it was going across the sky, and it had all the colors of the rainbow going behind it, he said. He watched it, and it went on, and it flew behind the house, and it came down into a gully back there and disappeared. He didn't know what it was. So he runs in the house. It scared him because he didn't know what it was. And slams the door behind him, and everybody stops and looks at him. And June asks him what's wrong, and he tries to tell them what he just saw. Well, they're trying to reason this out. My grandmother tells him, Billy Ray, maybe it was just a shooting star. And Billy Ray told her, no, Miss Glennie, I know what a shooting star looks like. It wasn't that. Well, maybe a meteor shower, because they had been having the meteor showers we have every August, believe it or not. And he said, no, I know, I've seen a meteor shower. I know what they look like. It wasn't that. And so, that's the only thing she could come up with, and nobody else could come up with anything. And so, but he kept on and kept on, and he was very agitated. June could tell something was wrong. It's her husband. And so finally my dad says, hey, well, let's just go back out there and you tell me again what you saw. So they head back out to the well, and they're standing there, and he points toward the sky, points toward the gully back there, and tells my dad again, what happened. My dad tries to reason with him again, with the shooting star theory and the meteor shower. And he's like, no, I know, no, it's none of those. And my dad tells us, well, listen, there's nothing here now. I don't see anything going on. Let's just go back in the house, enjoy the rest of our evening, because we got to go back to work tomorrow. So he agrees, and they start walking back to the house. And as they are, the old hound dog runs by them, tail tucked, ears down, scared to death, runs under the house. My dad thinks nothing of it. Well, he just got trouble. He thought, maybe a beehive or something, something, he got in trouble. So they kept on walking toward the house, when all of a sudden, from the back, coming from the woods, from the gully, was this little 3.5-foot tall being with a huge round head, big glowing eyes, huge ears, arms all the way to the ground. And it was floating on top of the ground. What was this thing? They didn't know. We wouldn't know today what that is. So they both go running in the house, slamming the door behind them. And so everybody stops and looks and, what's your problem? And so they're both trying to tell them what they just saw. Well, the first thing they're thinking, all right, Billy Ray here done got lucky, which Lucky was my dad's nickname. Done got lucky out there to go along with his little story to scare the girls, because these were all young people. Billy Ray's wife was only 18. They weren't, all in their 20s. They kept on and they kept on. And my grandmother finally told the guys, says, listen, I got to get these 3 kids to bed, and you 2 aren't helping me any. You need to stop. So she went and got the kids settled down and in bed, and she comes back, and lo and behold, my dad's at the front door with the shotgun. Billy Ray's at the back with the rifle. And so my grandmother is thinking, well, there's something going on here. They wouldn't be doing that. So she decides to go to where Billy Ray is at the back door to talk to him. So she goes outside there, and she squats down beside him, and she asks, Billy Ray, what did y'all see? And he told her, Miss Glennie, I don't know what it was, but I hope it's something that you never have to see. And so they sat there in silence. It was a beautiful night. But my grandmother did notice that the dog wasn't coming up. They had cats. Cats wasn't coming up, doing their rubbing on them and everything like cats do. She noticed that the crickets and the frogs and stuff weren't singing. This is unusual for an August evening. So they sat there. She could hear, they can hear the people talking inside, the kids talking, and the kids are asleep. The grown-ups talking and everything. And it's like, okay. So they sat there, and lo and behold, around the corner of the house comes this little 3.5-foot tall being, just like they talked about. My grandmother screams, and it must have been a really, really good scream because everybody comes running. And she tells them, I just saw it. There is something out here. And they help her up off the floor. And as they hear this shot ring out in the front of the house. Well, they run to the front of the house, and my Uncle JC had shot one through the window. Well, Billy Ray runs out the front door to see what it is because he thought, okay, he shot this thing. He hit it. It's got to be laying out there. So he runs out there to see the body. There's nothing there. As he's standing there, all of a sudden there's a hand that comes down trying to grab his hair. Well, my Aunt Eileen grabs him and yanks him back into the house. When she does that, my dad runs out there, turns toward where the hand came down, and there one sat. He goes, he shoots it. Of course, he hits it. It rolls, it floats away. Someone shouts, there's one in the tree behind you. So he turned, big maple tree, big old limb. There it sat, as pretty as you please. So he shoots it. Of course, he hit it. These are country boys. They're hitting, whatever they're shooting at. And it floats to the ground, rolls and scurries away. Well, he comes back in the house. They don't know what to do. They don't know what these things are. They're shooting them, but they're getting back up and leaving. Usually if you get shot with a 20 gauge or a 12 gauge shotgun and a 22 rifle, you're going to lay down for a while. Well, these things weren't. They were getting up and leaving. Well, the kids were up now. They were crying. June, Billy Ray's wife, was just hysterical. She didn't want to see whatever it was, so she was off in a corner with her eyes closed, covering them up, crying. They didn't know what to do. So my dad told us, listen, it's going to be okay. We will get to Hopkinsville. That's his thing. We'll go get help. We'll go to Hopkinsville. We'll find help. So anyway, they sat there in silence for a while, trying to find a clear spot to go because these things kept on coming up to the doors and windows, and they were shooting them back. And finally, it was silent. And then, all of a sudden, they heard one go across the tin roof. Well, this really put the kids crying. June was really hysterical. What are they going to do? These things are just all over the house. So my dad tells Billy Ray, he says, listen, let's go out here to the back. Let's see if we can see what's going on back here. So they go out the back door, and they're standing there. And as they are, they're looking around, of course, trying to see if they see any more of these little bodies. Well, they hear something behind them, and they turn, and there's one trying to go up the side of the house to get to the roof again. So my dad shoots it. He hit it good, apparently, this time, because instead of floating, it falls. But it gets up, and this really gives the man pause because it gets up and it floats about 40 foot toward the fence and sits on top of the fence post. Well, my dad shoots it again, and it falls off, and he's thinking, okay, maybe we're getting somewhere now. It fell again. So he's thinking maybe they're hurting them after all. So anyway, they run back into the house, and they tell everybody, hey, listen, we're going to get out of here. Let's just wait another minute. So they sat there a little bit longer till it gets quiet again, and he says, let's go. So they hit the trucks, head toward Hopkinsville, which is about 7 miles to the police station. They get there, and you've got 11 people from the age of 50 to 7 running in the middle of the night in this little police station with one officer on duty. Now, this is 1955. It's not like today. So this one little officer sees all these people rushing in, and they're all trying to tell him what just happened, and he's not understanding. All he can hear in his little ears and mind is they're shooting at people. And that was his thought. You're shooting at little men, and my dad is trying to tell him, listen, you're not understanding what we're trying to tell you. And finally, the officer just tells him, listen, just try to settle down. I'll get a hold of the chief. So he calls Chief Russell Greenwell. Greenwell tells him and says, just try to settle him down. I'm on my way. But in the meantime, you call Fort Campbell Army Base, which was about 10 miles from Hopkinsville. You call Fort Campbell. You call every state trooper that you can find. You call the paper. We're all going out to Kelly and see what's going on. So here you got this caravan of cars going out to little Kelly in the middle of the night. About 25 people in all. So here they are pulling up in the driveway everywhere they can be. And they get out, and it feels funny. It's eerie feeling. Something has certainly went on here. There were shotgun and rifle shells all over the ground outside, shotgun and rifle shells all over the inside of the house. The woodwork and the screens were shot. Clearly, something happened here, but what? They searched. They couldn't find any bodies. They couldn't find any blood. They did see, well, one of the police officers' cars did see a puddle of glowing substance by the post where they had shot that one at. So the first thing they did was get out and run to check that out because it was glowing. And when they got to it, it wouldn't glow. The only time it would glow is if you would walk away from it from a distance, you could see the glow. They called the chief over there, and Chief Greenwell came over there and looked at it. And sure enough, he could tell a difference. When you looked straight at it, there was like a spot on the ground that was different from the area around it. So what was it? Don't know. So anyway, they searched and searched, couldn't find anything. Finally, the chief went to my grandmother and told her, says, listen, Miss Glennie, I'm so sorry, but there's nothing we could do. There's nothing here. No blood, no bodies, no limbs, no feathers, no fur, nothing to show that you did shoot anything. So they left. So my grandmother was left with the 10 other people. So she got the kids settled back down again, finally got them in bed. She went and laid down herself, and she was laying in the bed, and my dad was sitting in the rocking chair beside her with the shotgun across his lap. She opened her eyes, and lo and behold, she saw one at the window again. And she thought, well, she's just tired because they were physically and mentally wore out. They had been going all night with this. So she opened her eyes a second time, and it was still standing there. The third time she did it, she screamed at my dad, they're back. So they got up and they started again, trying to keep them away from what they thought, trying to come in the house. And this went on until about 5:15, 5:30. The sun started coming up, and they believed that was their saving grace because the sun started coming up, and they disappeared. Well, after they disappeared, there was the invasion of the people because it had gotten out. It was everywhere. It was on the local radio station. Every paper from here to Texas to California was coming in to Kelly to find out what happened.
Were they respectful?
Some weren't.
Sure.
People were coming and camping out in the yard, setting up tents. People were setting up tables, selling stuff.
Oh, no
People
way.
were walking around the yard, walking through the house, just taking stuff, souvenirs.
So yeah, an invasion of the people, like you said.
The invasion of the people. And my grandmother didn't know what to do. She asked one of the officers if he could help get rid of them. And he got some others to help him, and they would get rid of them for a while. But as soon as the police officers would disappear, they would just come back. And this was just a constant. That it is recorded that Tuesday, after it happened on a Sunday. And that Tuesday after it happened, it was recorded that was probably over 2,000 people roaming around in that yard.
Wow.
Of course, proper protocol wasn't taken. Nothing was roped off. No samples were taken. Nothing was done. The military was there the next morning, Monday morning, and did a search grid. There was aircraft flying above. All this was going on. And, what do you do? There was a reporter from WHOP there in Hopkinsville. He was an engineer there at the radio station. He came and he interviewed the family. And he was the one that did the drawings, the 3 famous drawings.
The famous ones, yes.
The famous drawings. He did those. And, he was just blown away because they all told the same thing. The drawings were all so similar, and he took them separately. He didn't have them all together doing this. He took them separately off in a room and interviewed them. And so it was just all so incredible. People didn't know what to believe. You had your believers, you had your non-believers. Of course, you had all the neighbors around there. The thing that people don't realize is there was just so much that didn't come out till later. Like Fort Campbell Army Base, there were soldiers outside that night that actually saw some kind of craft to go over and they didn't know what it was. And they're military and they didn't know what it was.
So it could well be the exact same craft that came and landed.
Exactly. Neighbors, were seeing and hearing things during the night that night. And when the gunfire started, they were afraid to come out of their house because they didn't know what to do. That was a thing, too, that I think bothered my dad and them because being the neighbors that everybody was, everybody helped each other, but nobody came to help them that night. Well, they didn't want to get shot. Even the neighbor that had the farm behind my grandmother's, he was actually getting ready to come help because he had seen lights in the woods. He thought they were flashlights.
Oh.
So he thought some of the animals had gotten out and he was actually coming to help. But by the time he got his boots on and his flashlight started coming toward the house, the guns started firing off and he thought better of it. He was afraid he would get shot.
Sure, understandable.
So, and there was a state trooper that was just down the road from the farmhouse that was actually sitting in a parking lot at the restaurant down the road. And he heard something fly over and he looked and he saw something. And, the first thing they're thinking, well, it's a meteor because they've been having the meteor showers. But he said that was not a meteor because they knew what they were. They knew what they looked like. They've been having them all month. And he said this had a sound and it did not look like a meteor. So, there's a lot of stuff that people don't realize. And I have found all this out, and that's why I wrote this 3rd book that has a lot more in it that, it's just fascinating. And another thing I found out was my dad told a Texas newspaper that came down there and talked to him that you couldn't see him in the light. He kept telling the police officers and everybody that was there with their little spotlights and everything looking, he kept telling them, you can't see him in the light. You can only see him in the dark. Now, isn't that just crazy?
That's crazy. You've given me, my hairs are standing up on my arm.
Yeah, it's like they would disappear in the light.
Yeah.
But you can only see them in the darkness. So, it creeps you out when you hear something like that. But that is a written statement that he made to a Texas newspaper. And, there's just all kinds of stuff that I have found out about that's just incredible. This story is it's got so much more to it than people realize.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the one thing that struck me when we got to speak face to face, that it was a much richer story than,
since then, when you first came down, I didn't know half the stuff I know now.
Sure.
I mean, it's just crazy.
And it keeps building. I'd love to put you in touch with, and I'll do it after we talk, but Elena and I got to visit the National UFO Archives in Albuquerque, and they had lots of the original newspaper clippings from the event, from the local papers around Hopkinsville.
Yes.
I'm sure you have a lot of them, but I'd love to put you in touch just so you can fill each other's, the gaps in. The reception you said initially was crazy, and you had that invasion, and people were, all over the place in what they thought. Mm-hmm. Do you find it kind of startling that, your family didn't invite this experience? And I'm sure if they had a choice, they wouldn't have gone through it. Yet here are crowds of people saying, hey, we want to go on this ride. There's a bit of a disconnect there, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, this is something that they wished had never happened to them. If you knew my dad and how the kind of person he was, my grandmother being real religious and everything, it's something they didn't ask for. We'll never know why they chose that little farmhouse. We do know that Fort Campbell Army Base was holding a nuclear arsenal at the time.
Is that nuclear link again?
Very few people knew about this. The few people that did know about it called it the birdcage, believe it or not. And, was that what they were looking for? Because lights were seen across 4 different towns, 4 different little cities. Because you had it going from Clarksville to Fort Campbell to Hopkinsville to Kelly. So you had 4 different areas it was going through that people were seeing lights. Did it, was it meant to stop at Fort Campbell where the nuclear arsenal was, and it just overstepped and, accidentally landed in Kelly? We'll never know. We'll never know for sure.
Maybe Fort Campbell was too lit up, too many lights. So they just backed off and waited,
since they couldn't be seen in the light. But then again, if you think if they'd wanted to sneak on the base,
you want the light, right?
Invisible, yeah, sure. So, I don't know. We'll never know unless they decide to come back and let us know, which I don't think that's going to happen. But it's there's just a little eeriness to the story that people just don't realize. They don't realize what the family went through. Of course, they went through a lot afterwards because people were harassing them. For years, people tried to contact them, wanting to talk to them about the story. Of course, they didn't want to talk about it. They just wanted it gone, because the morning after, my dad sat everybody down and told them, don't talk about it, because no good could come of it, because everybody that was here that night was laughing at us. He said, so no good can come of this, so just don't talk about it. And so they didn't want to talk about it. But, it's just crazy.
So very much victims of the stigma around this subject then. And, back then, everything, we didn't have the internet to all exchange these stories and to see these patterns kind of emerging over time. This stood alone as a case unto itself. When it comes to the impact on your family, did it impact anyone's work that was present or anything like that? Were they pushed out of jobs or anything like that? Or was it just a general, point and laugh type thing?
Everything. Oh, yeah. My Uncle JC couldn't even hold a job.
Oh, my God.
He had a hard time because every time he would start a job, they would find out who he was, find out the story, put 2 and 2 together, and he would get ridiculed and laughed. It was just terrible. And he would end up quitting a job and he would go to another one. And you got to realize, like I said before, he was a Korean War vet. So he had probably seen things that, we will never see. That Korean War was a bloody war.
Yeah.
And I think that, and then this on top of it, something that they couldn't kill, that's got to mess with your mind. And so, he had a hard time with life. And, and the 3 kids, you got to realize they were like 7, 10, and 12. To this day, you can't get them to talk about it. They have especially the younger 2, they've just put it away and just don't have nothing to do with it. And the older one, he would talk about it a little, but he's 82 now, and he doesn't talk about it. And I think part of the problem there is, his memory is not as good as it used to be.
Sure.
And I don't think he wants to say something that could, mess it up, I would say.
Yeah.
But he used to talk about it. But yeah, you got to think. And my mom and her first husband and their 7 kids lived in Kelly at the time also. And she said that people were scared. Everybody that was there in Kelly were scared because they didn't know what these things were. They didn't know why they were there. What did they want in the first place? So the fear was, would they come back to get what they didn't get before?
Yeah.
And so that was a fear that was there for a long, long time. The people, my grandmother sold the house within 2 weeks. She got out of there and moved into Hopkinsville to an apartment complex because she was afraid. She didn't know if they could handle it again. And my dad and Billy Ray and the girls had to go back to work. So she was just going to be left there with her 3 kids and my Uncle JC and Aunt Eileen. So, could they handle it if these things came back? The fear. The family that bought the house, the kids, I've heard them say that they didn't want to move in that house. They were scared to death because the fear was there. Would they be?
Yeah. And we went up to, when we went to Hopkinsville, we went and found the old maps and we figured out where it was and we went. And everyone there, they're very, we weren't welcome. We'll say that. There were a few very kind people there, but it's clear that these people get hounded a lot for this and can I go on your land, XYZ. So they just want a normal life. So to anyone listening, don't go looking for it. You could get shot. But it speaks to the seriousness of this, right?
Exactly.
That is kind of all through the years rippled down, and it's still something that's considered like a hot potato. I noticed as well when we visited, there was in Hopkinsville, they have that museum and there's that wonderful little display there that we really enjoyed. And there are 2 boxes that you can put these like little plastic tokens in. And the one says, do you believe it? And the other one says, you don't believe it. You can choose. And when we were there, the I believe it box was like 3/4 full. And the I don't believe it was maybe like a slither of little plastic quarters at the bottom.
Oh,
yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
nice,
absolutely.
Nice.
It's been strange watching it kind of change over the years. I was a fan of Pokemon growing up, and there's a Pokemon based on these creatures, right? Sableye, little purple thing. And so the popularity's kind of changed around it. Do you think your dad would have been elated by people taking it seriously and engaging with it properly?
I'm hoping he would. I'm thinking he would. Because it helps people to realize something happened that night and that something happened to that family, which that's what he wanted. I mean, he just wanted people to believe him because something did happen. We don't know if they were extraterrestrial. We think they were because of all the lights and stuff that were seen that night. So we lean toward the extraterrestrial. But I've had people tell me that, maybe they were paranormal, maybe they were fairies, maybe, all this other stuff. They were called goblins, but the only reason they were called goblins was because my grandmother thought at first it was something the devil had brought forth, some kind of goblin from down below, and that's where we get the whole goblin thing. But, that's what he wanted. He just wanted people to believe.
Well, I hope he's getting some gratification with people like switching onto this more, especially what's going on with, UFOs and the government and things like that. It makes me think of, John Mack, the psychologist who interviewed the children at the Ariel School and things like that. When you read his book, where he details abductees, he says you don't have to believe them, but there is a PTSD reaction here. So something happened, and we really need to treat these people and try and figure out what's causing this. And it feels like we've just been pulling teeth for, almost 100 years now, just trying to get people to take it seriously.
Right. And, the thing, too, is you don't hear about things like this happening anymore. You don't hear about abductions anymore or stuff like this. You might see lights in the sky or whatever, but people just don't come forward and talk about if they have any kind of, interaction with anything. I don't know if if there's just not going on. Have the aliens backed off? They decided, you made your mess. We're going to let y'all take care of it,
For sure. I always think maybe they finished, like if we were in the Sahara tagging animals and tracking them, at a certain point the project finishes, right? And we all go home. And we might take a few samples with us, and those animals would never get to tell the other animals where they got to go. And that's kind of scary to think about.
Yeah, it is. It is.
You guys this was in Blue Book as well, right? And Blue Book, am I correct in thinking that they said it was a hoax? And I say that knowing, Blue Book was an Air Force controlled kind of UFO investigation to discredit. How did that feel?
Well, I get it. I mean, they just wanted to get rid of it. It's like anything like that. They want to get rid of it. Any kind of report from the 50s, 60s, 40s, whatever, they just want to get rid of it. And that's what they do. I mean, that's what they're there for, to prove it. But, they couldn't prove it. They still haven't proved it today. They'll never prove it. It was a hoax, because it wasn't a hoax. These were, simple country folk that didn't know any better. They didn't even have a radio in their house. I mean, they didn't know anything about extraterrestrial beings or anything like that. Like I said, my grandmother was a very religious person, and that's how she raised her kids. And, this was something they didn't want to happen to them. And, a lot of people that knew them back then, and even today, I've had people tell me, there's no way something didn't happen to this family. And, it did happen. I mean, it's just crazy. It just blows your mind, actually.
I guess, if you're going to say it's a hoax, then you've got to paint a picture of 11 people all just shooting holes in their house for no reason whatsoever, right? And run into the police station for no reason whatsoever. So you don't have to believe it's ET, but something happened, right? And really saying it's ET, like you said, your grandma was religious, so she saw it through that lens. Mm-hmm. And we've got a pop culture lens going on at the time, right? With sci-fi and things like that. So ET is the thing that kind of feels relevant to it. But like you said, no one was hooked onto that. It was just the easier way to explain it to people that were kind of coming in. And the same with the hoax. It's easier to say it's a hoax than it is to incorporate this event into your worldview, that it can happen anywhere.
But you got to realize, too, that, yes, their house was shot up. These were poor people. They couldn't afford to have their house fixed back up. They wouldn't have shot their house up. And that's another thing people realize, too. You don't do that. You don't do that to your property. And there's just so many things to this that, I know people, the first thing they'll go to, and here lately I've been really lucky, people, at conventions and stuff, they get to ask questions. And I've been really lucky the past, I'll say, couple of years. Nobody has brought up the alcohol thing. And I think people are realizing that there wasn't any involved, which there wasn't any involved. There was a police report, and I wish I could find it, that's supposed to have stated there was no alcohol. And that's another funny thing, too, because I contacted a daughter of one of the state troopers that was there that night that actually filed the report. And she told me that he used to talk about this, and he would say that something happened to that family that night. Something happened. And she asked me if I ever got his report. And I said, well, no, I've never gotten the state trooper's report or any report. And, I've looked on the was it Freedom of Information Act, and can't find anything. And so she told me, she said, well, just get a hold of Frankfurt. They should have it. It should be in the archives. I thought, well, sure. So I got on the computer, did everything I was supposed to do. You have to go through a whole rigmarole of bull crap to get anything. And so I did everything, sent it in. A few weeks later, I finally got an email from them stating that they couldn't find a file on that report with that state trooper.
How convenient for them.
How convenient. Isn't that something?
Yeah. And this happens in cases over and over again, right?
Exactly.
It's either destroyed or it's put into a silo where no one else can access it, and they just pretend it doesn't exist.
But yeah, she told me right out. She said, my dad was the one that did the report for that night. She said, you should be able to get it. Nope. Can't get it if they won't find it or can't find it.
I'm so glad that this whole case has someone so dedicated to digging this stuff up, because
oh yeah, and I've got friends that help me a lot. I've got one friend. He is a digger. He dives and digs into everything, and if he finds anything, he sends it to me like that. So he's helped me out a lot, and I'm very grateful for him, because I'm not that good at digging, but he digs in the dark, deep web and all kinds of stuff. And it's like, oh, okay. And yeah. And we even have, he found out about the whole Leonard Stringfield guy. Do you know about Leonard Stringfield?
Enlighten me. Go ahead.
Okay, well, he is a guy. He was really into the whole extraterrestrial thing. He was involved in a lot of different, there's a list. I've got it written down. But anyway, one of the things he was involved in is they would ask him to come in and research crash sites for UFOs.
Oh, okay.
Well, they asked him to come in and search the Kelly crash. Well, you don't know about the Kelly crash site, but anyway, to see if there was a crash, because supposedly there was. That's another story. So he comes in, does his thing, talks to soldiers, the whole thing, and his conclusion, there was something taken away that week, like that Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, after the whole incident that Sunday evening, because there was evidence that Fort Campbell came in, took something, then Wright Patterson went to Fort Campbell and took what they took, but they're calling it something else. I wish I had my paperwork in front of me. I could tell you what they called it. They call everything something official.
What do we? Yeah, right. They have terms like, UAP is the new one instead of UFO, but they'll say things like uncorrelated targets and things like that,
stuff that we don't, But anyway, he concluded that he believed there was a crash. Now, talking about a crash, I had a guy come visit me at my home. Oh, gosh, it was like 2008, maybe 2009, somewhere right in there. And it was funny how all this happened, because we lived in Princeton at the time, and we lived in town. And our little house sat on a corner lot. So we had a street in front of us, a street beside us. We had a sunroom in the back of the house. And that evening that this all happened, we actually had a couple of guys there that was talking to us about the Kelly incident. So we were sitting there in the sunroom talking, and we kept seeing this guy walk past the house, he'd come back up, walk back down, come back up, walk back. He kept doing this, and, you couldn't help but notice him.
Sure.
Finally, he comes up the driveway, comes to the sunroom where we're sitting, and asks if I am the Sutton that is related to the Suttons in Kelly that the UFO incident happened to. And we're like, yeah, that's me. He says, well, I need to talk to you. So we got on the deck and we all sit down, and he starts telling me that he knew somebody that was a soldier that worked at Fort Campbell when all this happened. And he said on his deathbed, he told him, he said, there was a crash. It was like 3 miles from Kelly. Said we came in and took it away, and Wright-Patterson took it. And he said, now, he told him on his deathbed, said he did not tell anybody else. He kept the secret all his life from the day this happened until he died. But he had to tell somebody because he didn't want it not to be known.
Sure.
So you got that. Then you got Leonard Stringfield that says, yes, all evidence shows there was a crash. So, okay, we're thinking that one my dad hit, and it fell twice because it fell off the side of the house when he shot it. It fell off the fence. Could that have been the navigator, and he died or something?
I was literally thinking that as you were telling me. I was like, wow, did your dad shoot the pilot?
And then another thing too, I don't know if you know this about, do you know about the Gleason-Nixon thing?
Go ahead.
Okay, Jackie Gleason, the actor, was friends with Richard Nixon, our president. Well, they got together in the 70s, and Nixon took him to, was it Wright? No, it wasn't Wright-Patterson. I forget which Air Force base it is. I have to look it up. Took him to an Air Force base and showed him 3 little bodies that were exactly described as the ones that were in Kelly. They had them in a cooler. He saw them. Why would he make that up? Why would he say that our president took him and showed him this? And he believes they were the bodies from Kelly. Because you don't hear about that, body form. The ones you usually hear about are the grays, the reptilians and all those kinds. You don't hear about the little 3.5 foot tall beings with big ears. Well, that's what these were. So There you go. You got that. And he's on record saying that. I mean, you can look it up. There's a book that I asked for it for Christmas, so I won't get it till Christmas.
Fingers crossed.
I know it's there because I went and got the mail and I could tell it was a book.
Well, this episode will be going out on December 23rd, I think. So I hope it's under the tree for you by then.
But I've got the book that's in about Nixon and Gleason and the whole thing. So I can't wait to get it so I can read it. But
awesome. That's really cool. And yeah, the connection between Gleason and Nixon is documented in so many different ways. This isn't just a random thing that someone's pulling up, And
exactly.
Gleason, if I remember correctly, he would make those custom built houses that look like UFOs. Like he had a very high interest in this stuff.
Oh, I didn't know about that, but I figured he did, for him to have, talked to Nixon about it and then to get together and then go look at these bodies and everything. So, but I don't know. A lot of Air Force bases, just like Wright-Patterson, they have sections where they don't let civilians go into. I mean,
absolutely.
Most places you can visit, like Wright-Patterson, you can visit. I mean, there are times when they will let you, like, MUFON has their thing up close to there, Cincinnati. And they will have a time when they'll take everybody and go to Wright-Patterson and you can visit, but there's a section they won't let you in. There's a reason for that.
And it wouldn't surprise me that, the Roswell wreckage was said to end up there. That is where they back engineer stuff. And when I visited the museum, the National Air Force Museum, which is right there next to the base, I was gobsmacked at how much alien merchandise they had in the gift shop. Aliens, UFOs, they're really leaning into it. And it just, everything else is really official. And I was like, wait, what? You tell us this stuff doesn't exist and you mock everyone, yet you're willing to take our money?
Yeah,
it's just weird,
odd.
right?
Huh.
Really weird.
Interesting.
Well, I've got to ask, did you have, in the days after, did you hear if there were any like Men in Black type characters, just strange Air Force officers or civilians kind of,
No, never heard of anything. No. And, another question that's often asked, would they, if they came back, would they talk about it? No, they wouldn't. My Uncle JC was even said that he would never speak of it again. If they were to come back and visit, if he were to see them again, he would never say a word about it because of how bad it was for the family. Because they were beaten down over this. They really, really were. And it's crazy how society will do that to you. Yeah.
Incredible experience, incredible event, really informative for the whole of the planet. And humanity just tends to go, you're lying, and just ignore them, And it's funny that, everyone was out the back trying to figure out what the object was, saying maybe it's a meteor, because about 100 years before in France, the astronomers there were arguing whether meteors even existed because they would treat farmers like crazy who said that a rock fell from the sky. And the astronomer's name was Lapierre, and he said, there are no rocks in the sky, therefore they cannot fall from the sky. Of course, now we know that he was an idiot, but just goes to show, right? It's the same thing, but just another go round on another subject.
Exactly, yep. It's amazing.
So how did you first find out about your dad's experience?
Oh, my
Did he just tell you? Or did you ask, like, what happened?
No. They did not talk about this. They kept it hid from us kids. Of course, all the older kids knew. The 7 that my mom had with her first husband, they knew it, but they never talked about it. It was like everybody was put on silent mode. You don't talk about this. How we found out about it, or how I found out about it, is back in 1969, this man and woman came and wanted to talk to my dad about it. I mean, I'll never forget it. It was a Sunday afternoon. This little man and woman comes knocking at the door, wanting to talk to my dad. And so my mom and dad are thinking, all right, they're going to hear it sometime. Might as well hear it now. Sat us down, and he started telling this story. And afterwards, I was scared to death. I was 8 years old when I first heard that story. And even at 8, I love horror and I love sci-fi. But after hearing that, it ruined my outer space movies that I love so much.
Oh, wow. So you couldn't watch them after you heard about it so much?
Even today, it's hard sometimes to watch some of the alien stuff. It depends.
Yeah.
I don't like abduction movies. That's really scary to me, to be abducted. I don't like those.
And some of them, like, it makes me think of Travis Walton, Fire in the Sky, where it's really horrific and it doesn't depict his experience as he had it. If you read into his experience, it was much nicer, it was calmer, it seemed like they were trying to help him. But that's not in the movie. It's just an all-out horrific
And if you
scene.
ever see him, which I've seen him speak, and I've talked to him, something happened to that man. You can tell it did.
I agree.
But it back then, when I first heard it at 8 years old, after that, I would go around at nighttime and shut all the doors and windows and curtains and shades and whatever, because I was afraid something was going to come in and look at us.
Sure.
But I can tell you this, the following weekend after we heard the story, my dad took us to Kelly and showed us where it all happened. And the well was still sitting there. The poor little house was still there, but it was, caving in. Then he took us all the way to the back of the field, back in the back, and showed us this huge round circle on the ground where nothing was growing, still in 69.
Wow.
I'll never forget that. And I've had people tell me that when they were growing up there in Kelly, that they would walk across those woods and that field, and they would see that circle also. And some of them said, I would just walk right through it. So people have been seeing that circle for, as long as they could see that circle that was back there. So that made it even more real.
Wow. So they in spite of them saying there's no evidence, there are these markers, like the holes in the house walls and the windows. You've got this circular divot on the ground, and it all kind of adds together to paint a picture. And the glowing material that you said about, right? Which totally makes sense when you said about looking at it versus being far away from it, what you can see, and the beings not appearing in light, but only in dark.
Right.
There's something going on there, right? That's so interesting. Have you ever had any personal experiences?
Not really. Have I seen lights I couldn't explain? Sure.
Sure. But nothing like the goblins,
I hope I never do. I don't want to see them. They stay away from me.
I love that you're so sensible with that. I speak to so many people that they beg for a UFO sighting, and I'm just like, they're not all good, guys.
No. I don't know what they want. We don't know if they're good little aliens or bad little aliens. We don't know. I don't want to find out.
Yeah, for sure. So aside from not watching sci-fi movies in the same way as you did before, did anything else change for you after hearing that story?
Oh, just at night, if you go out at night, you look at the sky. If we're out at night, that's a big thing too. I watch the lights in the sky. Even when I go to bed at night, we got a big window in our bedroom, and I'll open up the curtain just to look out at night before I lay down. It's just a habit I've done. And that's it, really. And I've gotten better about the alien movies. I mean,
sure.
I like Predator. He's an alien. I like,
sure.
I like that new one, Alien Earth.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Stuff like that. I know people that are supposed to have been abducted. And it's just a scary thought. And it's just, would you want to be abducted?
Right. My wife and I have a deal that if one of us is abducted, we've got a pit stop for the other one. Like, they're welcome to take us, but both of us have to go together so we can, calm each other. That's the deal.
Okay, gotcha.
But ideally, we don't want to be abducted,
Right. So see, it's kind of a scary thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you talk to people that have been, it's...
Yeah, it has a really deeply unsettling effect on people that just impacts their whole life. So yeah, like I said, no one asked for these things. This is how I always come to it when someone says a UFO story and people say it's a hoax. I'm just like, no one wants this to happen to them when it's actually happening in this way.
Exactly. I mean, ghosty stuff. We've had that kind of thing happen, but
please tell.
Oh gosh, it's crazy stuff. Well, you really want to hear?
I really do, yes. Well, there's a lot with the phenomena, the UFO phenomena kind of overlaps with other things, and you have the hitchhiker effect. So it's said that when UFO stuff happens, you kind of get this poltergeist activity after it. So anyone listening to this should be more than comfortable with jumping from one to the other. So you go ahead.
Well, before we moved where we are now, we used to live in Princeton, Kentucky. We owned a little farm. It had 32 acres, mostly just woods, which we loved. We should be shot for selling it. At the time we lived there, we also had a metaphysical shop. Now, in our metaphysical shop, we sold all the regular stuff, stones and rocks and sage and cards, all that stuff you do in a metaphysical. We also had a tarot reader. We had a Reiki person that did Reiki. And we had a little girl that could talk to dead people.
Wow.
Well, one night she spent the night with us. She gets up. Well, no, she didn't get up. She was in the guest room sleeping, and she said this Indian kept coming in to the room. She kept seeing an Indian. And she says, well, she thought he's wanting something, so she got up and followed him.
Brave.
She followed him to our dining area, which was really big. It was dining kitchen. And this house we lived in had these huge monster windows, just big monster windows. And pointed out toward the backyard. So he goes that direction. So she goes up to the window and she looks out in the backyard. She sees about 50 other Indians. So she tells me this. And the next morning when we get up, so we get ready, go down to the shop. And so when the other two people get there, we tell them. And they're a couple. And they says, well, we need to come out and look at your land. Something's going on. So they come out. And the little girl that sees dead people comes too. And as we're there, she sees an older woman walking back there in the backyard. And the two others, excuse me, they're sensitive, so they can tell things too. So they said, there's something wrong with your land. Your land is angry. We can see fire. And we're like, okay, what are we going to do about this? And they said, well, we need to bless your land. And so the following weekend, they came and they brought all of their stuff. We went back there in the land and they did all of their little stuff, gave blood, the whole nine works. Well, after that, we didn't see any more Indians, and or she didn't, and we never seen any. But I found out like a couple of weeks after that the Trail of Tears had actually went through our land.
Oh, wow.
If anybody knows the story of the Trail of Tears, that's the Cherokee that had been moved, and they're, going walking through the land. And apparently something had happened on our land. And another thing, too, is when we bought the land, of course, we walked it. But back in the back of it, there were 3 big, perfectly round mounds back there. Are they burial mounds? We don't know. We never touched them. The grass just grew over them. They were beautiful round mounds. And so we don't know. But the thing is, I forgot to tell you what happened before the whole Indian thing. My husband and I were asleep one night. Well, we weren't asleep. Let me go back. My husband and I were in bed one night, fixing to go to sleep. And our bedroom was on the top floor. And we had this big deck that went out with French doors. And there's no steps going up to the deck. You can't get to the deck from the outside. And it was We're laying there in bed, and all of a sudden we hear something, bam, hit one of the glass doors. Well, we look over that way, we don't see anything, and we're thinking, well, maybe it was a bat, maybe, or something. So my husband gets up and goes and looks, and there's nothing out there on the deck. he doesn't see anything. So we just let it go. He gets back in bed. It's not 5 minutes later till, bam, there's another hit. We're like, what the heck? What's hitting this glass? So I have a flashlight beside my bed. And so I get it, flash it through there. And I'm me and my little brain, I'm expecting to see a Bigfoot looking over the top of our deck. And I'm looking down at the bottom. I don't see anything. There's nothing there. And another thing, too, there had been a light snow. So if anything had been on the ground or on the deck, there would have been prints.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's nothing there. Well, okay, let's just let this go. So guess what? Bam, third time. I'm like, oh, heck no. And so I get the flashlight, look again. There's nothing there. Nothing in the snow. We never know what that was. So I just cover my head up and I finally just go to sleep. Well, the next morning, my husband gets up, goes to work because he has to be at work early. Well, I'd always get up with him, then I would go back to bed and I'd sleep because metaphysical shop, you don't open it up till afternoon. Nobody comes to a metaphysical shop early in the morning, let me tell you. So we never opened it up until 12 o'clock. So I go back to bed and we got cats. And so my little cats, they all get in bed with me again and we get settled in for another hour, hour and a half of sleep. Well, that ain't going to happen because we get there, we lay down and 3 taps on the window, just like somebody's fingernail went. I'm like, oh no. The cats are all ears up, looking toward the glass, like they knew something was there and they stayed that way for, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. They did not move their eyes off that glass. You talk about being spooked. I got my little butt up, got ready, left the house, got to the shop, told everybody what happened. Oh, they're like, well, we don't know. And then the whole Cherokee thing happened after that.
Wow.
I just wonder now if it was some of them trying to get my attention, But that was spooky.
Yeah, very spooky. It sounds like you handled it really well and normally by just going nope and running away. That's what I would do too.
What else could you do?
Right.
The scary thing is, of course I had to go shower and everything right up there where all this just happened at. So, it was like scary the whole time I was there trying to hurry up and get out of there. But that was, and the thing is the cats, cats know things. And that was one of the things that was so weird because, they all just instantly just ears up in the air, heads turned toward that door and would not take their eyes off of it. So what were they sensing? What were they seeing?
Wow. Yeah, I had an experience where my dog was in the middle of a living room and I was on my own home with him and he was jumping up and down as if there was someone in front of him wagging his tail, like just what he does when he greets people, but there was no one there. And I backed out of the room and was just like, I'll leave you to that then, whoever you're greeting. I'm not going to mess with that.
Yeah, it's spooky stuff.
It's uncanny.
But I've had that happen, but nothing since then.
I've got to point out as well that 3 taps is a very common kind of, happens in poltergeist cases, but it happens in UFO stuff too. And I know the guys who made the Hellier series.
I know, Greg. Yep.
And they're awesome. I love what they do with the Estes method and things like that. Highly recommend watching Hellier to anyone that's listening to this. It's free on their website. Greg, they made it themselves.
Greg actually got a hold of me back when all that was going on and wanted to know if I thought the Kelly goblins were related to the goblins, in Eastern Kentucky.
Sure.
He even came down to Kelly and we met and we've actually done a couple other things together. But he came down to Kelly. We tried to find out if there's any caves. Of course there's caves. There's caves all over Kentucky. And the whole
And that's the thing. So in that show, they get 3 tones and 3 taps as well. And it's a recurring theme throughout, as well as the cave thing. That's one of the reasons we came to visit as well, because my wife loves going into caves and exploring caves, but also there's this weird kind of aspect to it. And it struck me that Kentucky is kind of a hotbed of this kind of stuff. I guess you have the Bell Witch, you have this stuff, and so much more. And any ideas why that is?
I don't know. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, we do have a lot of weird stuff. I don't know. There's a lot of haunted places here in Kentucky. You can go any town. I mean, we got a place here in Brandenburg, Jailhouse Pizza, and it's haunted.
Great pizza, by the way.
We had a TV crew come and do a show there one year, and
wow.
Yeah, they say it's haunted.
That was awesome.
History.
You recommended that to us when we came to meet you,
yes,
and so we went in there right after, and it was great pizza. And we went in one of the jail cells, and didn't see anything. I tend to get spooked when I'm in places that are haunted. But it seemed pleasant. Whatever was around being spooky wasn't there when we were there. So I highly recommend it. I'm curious what you think about, so many different people see so many different types of beings, right? In this case, it's the goblins, but like you've mentioned, greys, Nordics, mantids, ant people, Bigfoot, like there's so many different kinds. And there's an idea that we're all seeing the same thing, but it's presenting to us in a different way depending on our expectations. What do you think of that idea?
Oh, I never thought of that. I've never heard that before. Huh. I guess that could be. I mean, we all grow up in different ways. I know you got your Bigfoot people, that they're Bigfoot. So, probably that's what they're going to see as a Bigfoot. I've got the goblin brain. So, that's what I'm going to see as goblins. So, maybe there's something to that. It's all of what we have in our head and what we want to believe or what we want to see.
Yeah, for sure. I've got goblin.
The old brain's a powerful thing. So that's just like going to the doctor, or the dentist. Right. This is a thing here. I go every 6 months for my checkup. But by golly, that day before, my whole mouth will just be hurting.
Sure.
And I know it's just going to be a simple cleaning. It'll be all right. But still, in my brain, and so your brain is a powerful thing.
That's so true. You're right. Your expectations in something just like the dentist, it really colors your experience, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. I've got to say as well, I've got Goblin Brain needs to be a t-shirt for GoblinCon 2026. I think that'd be a great one. So what do you think, and I'm aware when I ask this question that, my ideas on this change hour to hour, day to day, and yours probably do too. So right now, if I said to you, what do you think the phenomena is? What do you think this all is? What would you say?
The goblin phenomenon? What do I think it is?
Yeah. Do you take it at face value?
I don't know. I mean,
it's a big question, I know.
You got people that absolutely love it. I mean, you got hardcore believers, which I'm so glad for, because I believe something happened that night. Most definitely. I have to. I know how it affected my dad. I know how he was growing up with everything. I know how my 2 uncles and my aunts are today. So,
I guess it can run in many different ways, right? It could be ET, just straight up. But then there are so many other different scenarios. And I always go back to thinking about Homo forensis was a human precursor that was just, very small people. And it was said to be a hoax for a long time. And then they found skeletons and realized that it was real. So it could be something as simple as this, right? Like just a hominid that is developed in a different way. But it can also get really esoteric and kind of leak into the metaphysical stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, definitely. We don't know. I mean, just like Hellier, are there little beings living in the caves around us? We don't know. Could that have been what was going on that night? I don't think so. Because there were too many people seeing lights and sounds and stuff that they had never seen before. And then that happens. So, but, that's one thing Greg Newkirk wanted to pick my brain about. Could these little beings, could one or two of them got left? And they went to the caves and they started living in the caves and probably making families, and they changed from living in the caves, maybe lost 3 years or they got smaller or whatever and paled and could that have happened? Sure, I believe that could have happened. I like to believe there are things in this world we don't know about that we can't figure out. I don't want them to find Bigfoot. Let him be mysterious. Is he an interdimensional being that's coming back and forth? That's the thing that they think too. We don't know. Are these little beings the Kelly goblins? Are they some little beings that are around us right now and we can't see them in the light? We don't know.
I'm paranoid now, Geraldine. I'm looking around wondering, am I in here on my own?
It's a creepy thought.
Right.
See them in the dark. Maybe that's why most of the time when there is an alien sighting, they're at night and not in the daylight. We don't know because you can't see them in the daylight. I like to think there are things out here that we can't figure out. It makes the world mysterious. It keeps us on our feet and makes things a little exciting, makes it more fun. Maybe scary, but fun. Hey.
Sure, absolutely.
As long as they don't take me off in their spaceship, I'm fine.
Or at least ask permission first. Say, hey, Geraldine, would you like to come for a ride? And we'll drop you back in 1 hour.
Well, what are we going to do in that 1 hour, though?
Right, exactly. You want to know.
Now, if you're going to take me on there and feed me and, all that kind of stuff, okay. But don't take me on there for anything else.
Right. Yes, exactly. This kind of all brings me to the official government narrative, and if you're listening to this on audio, I'm doing the quotation marks with my fingers here. Because there's been a lot of movement on hearings, on, maybe getting disclosure through the government and stuff like that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on all that because, you've been in this longer than probably, or as long as anyone listening, certainly longer than me. So please, it would be lovely if you shared your thoughts on
thing.
Yeah, government disclosure. Is that something you put any weight in? Are you waiting for it? Are you, do you want it?
What? We better not wait too long for that or we'll be dead. I think they mean well, in a way, because what do you think would happen to society if we all did find out that there are beings amongst us? Say there are beings amongst us, walking amongst us, living amongst us. That's kind of creepy.
Very creepy.
Are we, are they having their own little families and all that type of thing, and we just don't know about it? I don't know. I would like to know, can the government be transparent and let us know and bring us in on more of this stuff? In a way, it would be nice, and then in a way, it wouldn't, because I think it would tear down our society in a way because of our religion. One thing I do know, living where we live, people around here that are really, really, really religious think we are it and there is no other being.
Sure.
There is no, with all our vast universe out here, their little brain cannot comprehend there could be other living beings, which is crazy. So, you've got that whole aspect there of religion. And I think it would tear it down. And, I believe in God, And my thing is, if you know your Bible, God created the heavens and the earth, and he created all this other stuff. And then he decided to create us in his image. So to me, that means he's made all this other stuff out here. Then when he decided on earth and everything he put on here, he needed somebody to take care of this. And he decided to put us that looked like him, his image, on here. So what's to say there isn't other beings out here, but they're up there looking down on us, trying to make sure we don't do something stupid until God says, oh, just go ahead, let them do something stupid and kill themselves off, So, there's a whole lot into this whole alien thing. The government letting us know finally, and what would it do to our society and how people would believe, and the fear, because you know how crazy things are right now. What would it be if there was just some other total being come into the play that's non-human? People would lose their freaking mind. They really would. Because our society can't take it. We can barely take what's going on right now. So I don't know. In a way, I'd like to know. I'd like the government to tell us what's really going on. But then in a way, it's kind of like, should they? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all they'll be able to say to us is, hey, it exists, we can't protect you from it. And there's no way in hell they're going to say anything about it if they can't protect us from it, right?
Oh, and they can't protect us from it.
No?
There's no way. No way.
No.
You can't protect a being that is so much more advanced than we are. You can't tell me that if there are beings up there, they couldn't just come down here and demolish us in a few seconds and that would be it. You can't. Yeah. So, and people don't want to believe that, though. We're it.
Right. And then, you get the other extreme, right? Like I speak to a lot of believers who think we're not it, but everyone on earth is ready to know when we'd all be holding hands and kumbaya after, it was revealed to us. And I think that's just as, deluded, really, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is deluded. People are crazy. We got some crazy folks out here, I'm telling you.
Was it George Carlin who said, imagine the most crazy person you can think about, and then realize that the craziest person is so much more crazier than that?
Yeah, exactly.
While we're on the government stuff, I wanted to ask if they did come out and they said, this is officially real, we've known all this time, we've got this record, we've got bodies, yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. Would you feel that you and your family were owed an apology or any reparations?
Nah.
No?
Nah, I don't believe in reparations. Life is life. You got thousands of years that we've been here. You can't just muddle over what's happened in the past. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
No.
So almost go ahead. I
don't expect an apology or nothing like that. I just want them to acknowledge the fact that it happened and that they're real. That's it. That's all they have to do.
Absolutely. You said something really beautiful earlier when you were talking about the aliens looking in on us and why God put us here, about us being, put here to look after the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always thought about this idea of us as gardeners and becoming better gardeners for the planet to be really rich. In terms of the connections that we all have with the planet. Do you think, I know we've touched on kind of cats already, but do you look outwards on this planet and see sentience in other beings, or do you think it's just us?
What do you mean, sentience?
Sentience, so kind of like intelligence in animals. So like whales, cats, dogs, those kind of things.
Oh, Lord, yes. They're definitely intelligent. Every one of these cats we have, and we have many, they each have their own personality, and they are smart. I mean, look at these animals out here and how they survive. Like, let's see, what's a good example? Like a bird, once it's kicked out of the nest, it knows it's got to go feed and take care of itself. Because once that mama bird kicks it out, that's it. It doesn't come back. Animals are made to survive. They were made with instincts and survival. And, that's like the great lion over in Africa, the king of the jungle. He ain't the king for no reason. Everything knows how to exist and how to survive, and they've all been put here for a different reason, So yes, I mean, and we were put here to help take care of this earth, to help all of this to survive. And we're doing a dang poor job of it, in my opinion. I mean, it just blows my mind how we're just taking up all the land for stupid stuff. I mean, we had like a big to do here in this is a small town. It's less than 3,000. And they were wanting to bring in an AI center. And we fought it. And right now it's not coming in. I think we still got some more to do, but this AI center was going to take up this big, beautiful area of land that they were going to have to tear it all to pieces, take the water away that is needed for people, because out in the area where they were going to put it, there are some people, some days they don't even have enough water pressure to take a shower.
That's crazy.
And they're going
to
take this and put it, an AI center in that's going to take their water away, and plus a lot of other stuff that I'm not going to get into. But, we're taking up all of our land for all of our stuff that we think we've got to have now. And the animals are getting pushed out. And I'm a big animal person, so I absolutely hate it. And there's nothing we can do about it because the population is getting greater and greater and greater. We're big over here, but it's being taken up, and it's being taken up quick.
Well, I hope you can keep that out, because I know that those AI centers are just a drain on resources for whatever they're put up. And do we really need to make silly pictures of anything we can imagine? Pick up a pencil, learn how to draw, sit in nature and draw a tree, have that experience,
Exactly. Well, kids today don't know how to do that, though. They've got to have the pad that can do everything for them.
I remember thinking, I used to work in an Apple store, and I remember thinking, oh yeah, all the kids that are growing up now, they're going to know how to use computers. Because, I was born in 85, so I was kind of on the cusp between digital and analog, so I kind of fought in both. And I was like, yeah, everyone will know how to use computers. And that could not be further from the truth. If there's not an app for that, or some easily packaged thing where someone doesn't have to think about it, then they'll go for it. But other than that, not interested,
Right. It's crazy. I don't know sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we have people like you trying to help. We have the white blood cells of the planet, as well as the viruses that try and overtake it. But that back and forth is, it's almost an arm wrestle through human history, isn't it? And as a last question in this channel, because these conversations often go into, like you said, metaphysics, philosophy. We kind of find ourselves in the weeds there. So I like to ask, and I'd really love to hear your answer because of your experience. What do you think it means to be human?
What does it mean to be human? Wow, that's a crazy question there. To be a human being, I believe, is somebody that cares, that is responsible. Let me think. Because I know how I want to be. Because I want to care about others. I want to be responsible. I want to be courteous and kind. To try to do right toward others. That is being human. I mean, we were put here to do right. And that's how I believe. I believe, my husband kind of gets me sometimes because I try to look at the good in everybody and not the bad. So, I try to look at somebody's good side and try to see, well, maybe they're doing this because this, happened.
Sure.
Or,
so if you see someone speeding on a highway, you're going to think they're having an emergency. You're not going to think, exactly. What a douchebag.
Exactly. That's what he would think. And that's exactly what he'd call him. So, that's how I am. I try to see the good side in humanity. And which here lately, I don't think there's a lot of good to it. But, and try to do right toward nature, toward, like I said, humanity and everything, because that's part of being human. You've got to care. You've got to really care, I think. And that's me. I try to care. I like, people that are responsible for their actions. And that's how I am. But anyway.
I hear you.
That's being human.
That was a beautiful answer. Thank you so much. I guess such a range of answers from that question. Someone just held their dog up and went, dog, human, and other people give like really profound things like you just did. So it's a fun question.
Okay. Whoops.
No, I love your answer.
I'm trying to grab the cat. Well, there's not one in here though.
Yeah, when you want them, they're not around. Typical cats, right?
Oh, well, they can't be in here. This is my husband's room and it's full of those electronics we were talking about.
Sure. Sure. Okay, well, they're all, the difficult questions. So would you be so kind as to finish up by just telling us about GoblinCon 2026, where people can find information if they want to come along and say hi and enjoy the festivities?
Yes, we are planning GoblinCon 2026, August. I think the 22nd and 23rd. We got to start having our meetings. Is that purposely
on the anniversary of the
It won't be
event?
this year, but it'll probably be on the anniversary next year.
Okay.
Because I think the anniversary is on a Friday, and we're planning on having it on Saturday and Sunday, which is the 22nd, 23rd, I believe. Okay. So it's going to be August, of course, 22nd, 23rd. We're planning a lot of new things in this one that we didn't have in the other one. We're wanting to have more entertainment with this one. We're still going to have our speakers, probably our workshops like we did this in 2025, and probably our panel discussions. But we're wanting to add like some cool stuff, like maybe magician. We're thinking about bringing in a magician, a paranormal magician.
Very cool.
I know a group from Chicago that does puppets, and that's what they do. They put on these elaborate puppet shows, and I'm going to try to get them in. And we're looking at some other things to bring in for entertainment. Of course, there'll be a lot of vendors. We're hoping to get 80 to 100 vendors, which we probably will this year because we're having it at a different time. And, of course, speakers, and we're going to have a great crew there again this year like we did this past. We're just looking really forward to it. It did so well We were really fortunate, did so well, but we're going to have it again at the Bruce, which is a convention center there in Hopkinsville. So just keep a lookout. Just look up GoblinCon on Facebook or GoblinCon KY. And all the information, vendors, applications, everything will be right there if you want to be a vendor. And it's going to be fun. It was fun this year, so I know it's going to be, they're planning on it for being a real blast next year, so we'll see.
That's awesome. Well, hopefully Elena and I will get to come out and say hi again and enjoy the festivities.
That'd be so great, yes.
As we take our leave of the Kelly Goblins, we're reminded of a simple truth. Some stories don't end, they merely recede into the shadows. In the realm of the unexplained, certainty is a luxury seldom afforded. Whatever you choose to believe, the events of that Kentucky evening left their mark on a family, on a community, and on the long ledger of unexplained experiences that refuse to be forgotten. The truth remains out there, patient as the starry night itself, just waiting for those brave enough to seek it. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, remember to be curious. The universe is bigger than we know. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on Spotify or on your chosen platform. If you could like, share, or subscribe, that would be very much appreciated. It helps us find our tribe. If you'd like to support the show and get access to a 1-hour live chat each month and early, ad-free access, you can find us at Patreon. Just follow the link in the show notes or at our website, tobehumanshow.com. And feel free to reach out via the contact page or email at hello@tobehumanshow.com. You can also find us on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, or X at tobehumanshow.
What It Means to Be Human is a double-barrel production. This week's episode was produced by Roz Mugford and Dan Zetterström. Sound post-production by Parker Mosley with technical support from Dale Mugford. Our theme music is by Thunderbird.